Alright guys, so I've got another San Martin comparison video here. So I'm going to be comparing the old San Martin SN036G to the newer SN036GB. So let's jump straight in and let's start going over the dimensions. So in terms of the diameter, we've got the same on both, 41.5mm. Thickness, there's an ever so slight difference. With the older version it's 13.6mm, the new one is 13.7. Then lug width, they're both 20, and the lug to lug, they're both 48.5. So now let's talk about the movements. The older one has the 8215 or 8315, whereas the new one, they've switched out and they've gone for the NH35. So that probably accounts for the ever so slight difference in thickness between the two. Personally, I do prefer the NH35 over the 8215 due to that rotor noise. When it comes to the bezels on both, they're both 120 click ceramic bezels, so no difference there. Both have sapphire crystal. Both have BGW9 loom, and again I'll show you what that's like in a bit. When it comes to the differences, the older one has 200 meter water resistance, whereas the newer one has 300 meters, and a helium escape valve. Another big difference with the new one is they've got gradient dials now, not just plain one solid colour. Another really important change is the fact that it's now got the new on-the-fly adjustable clasp that San Martin use on a lot of their watches, so I do really appreciate that one. One of the biggest changes though is the fact that they just upped the overall finishing quality. So let's take a closer look at what that actually looks like when you see them side by side, and also show you some of those other differences we've mentioned previously. So straight away you can see we've got that lovely gradient dial on the one on the right, the new one. Obviously if you're not keen on this colour, they have different colours too, most of which will have the bezel colour matching the dial, but I just wanted to go something a little bit different to the previous one. And I do think it looks really good, I do think it works well. I just love the kind of retro look it's got with this one. And if you saw my previous video, you'll know that I've got a little bit of a thing for brown dials at the moment. Bit of a phase I'm going through. In terms of the rest of the dials, there's not a lot of difference. So we've got applied indices and logos on both. The only difference being the text on the bottom. One says 200 meter water resistance obviously, and the other one says 300. So let's take a closer look at the finishing on this new one. And you can see the attention to detail on the finishing is really nice on this now. It wasn't bad on the old one, but on this one it's even better. So you can see we've got a polished chamfer detail on the edge of the bracelet. So that carries on now across the case, bracelet and also the clasp. So it's just a more cohesive design, and again, really smooth, no sharp edges at all. And they have changed the case shape with this slightly, so they've kind of got the integrated crown guards, whereas the previous one, I'll bring in quickly now so you can see side by side, that's more flat. It's not as prominent a curve. And also with the bracelet, you can see we've not got that. Well, we've got an ever so slight polish on the edge, but it's not as defined, not a chamfered polish as it is on the new one. So again, just a more refined finish. They've smoothed out all the rough edges. I know some people did complain about some San Martins having slightly sharp edges sometimes. And if we take a closer look at the dial, you can see that gradient now. So it's darker toward the edge with a more brown in the centre, well, lighter brown in the centre. And you can see that 300 meter water resistance there at the bottom as well. I'll quickly bring back in the old one. And you can see we've just got the solid colour there, and obviously the 200 meter water resistance. So getting back to the new one, as I mentioned earlier, because we've got that 300 meter water resistance, we've also got a helium escape valve. So I'll quickly show you that now. Obviously I haven't been able to test this out, but I do like the fact that they've upped that. So I think you should be able to go diving with this watch. And quickly show you that the older version didn't have that. So now let's get a zoom out and let's take a closer look at this bracelet. So starting off, we've got the new clasp I was on about, the on-the-fly adjustable clasp. I really do love these. They're so easy to use and you can get the perfect fit and obviously adjust it throughout the day. And again, here's the old one in comparison. It wasn't a bad clasp by any means, had plenty of micro adjust, worked just fine, but once you've used an on-the-fly adjustable clasp, it is difficult to go back to not having it. So now let's go over the bezels and compare the actions on these two. Because as I said, they're the same specs wise, but there is a slight difference between them when you're actually using them. So we'll start with the new one. So no play at all there. And as you can hear, it is quite a firm, loud click. When it comes to the alignment, perfectly aligned, no issues there. So now let's quickly show you the old one and let's listen to how this compares. So no backplay at all, but it's a lighter action and not quite as loud when in terms of the clicks. When it comes to the alignment, that's also spot on too. So now let's compare the lume on these two. So let's charge them up, give them a proper chance. And there we go. So you can see we've got BGW9 on both of them. And they're both really good. No patchiness or anything. Consistent across the hands and the indices. No issues at all. So not really any difference between these two, but they didn't need to improve the lume anyway, because it was already really good, as you've come to expect from San Martin watches. And this one is no exception. So they'll be enough to last you overnight. So now let's show you both of these movements in action. So unscrew the crown, pull it out to the first position, and you can change the ghost date. Pull it out to the second one, you can see the second hand hasn't stopped, so we haven't got hacking. Obviously just change the time though still. Pop it back in, hand winding. So it works well enough, but obviously it doesn't hack, and as I said earlier, it does have a little bit of rotor noise. And now let's compare that to the new one. So as I said, this has got an NH35 as opposed to the Miyota 8215. So again, we've got the same ghost date position. Pull out to the first position, you can change that. Pull out to the second one though, we have actually got hacking, so the second hand stops. And then obviously we can just change the time. Pop it back in, hand winding, all works well. And with the NH35 you don't have the rotor noise that you have with the Miyota 8215. So the only thing left to do now is show you what it's like on wrist, and then we'll wrap this up. And here's what it looks like on my 7-inch wrist. And I do really love the look of this. I really like now that they've got the polished chamfer detail running across the whole of the watch, across the case, bracelet and clasp. And obviously that on the fly clasp is really good. You get the perfect fit. And I just love the attention to detail on everything. No sharp edges at all. All polished chamfered edges, which catch the light nicely as well. I really like the gradient dial too. Just adds a little bit more interest. So the question is this a better watch than the previous one? Yeah, I think it is. The quality of the finishing has definitely gone up a notch. And obviously you've got that on the fly adjustable clasp now too as well as that upped water resistant rating and the helium escape valve. And they've now switched to the NH35 as well, which I prefer. So that's it for this one guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.